Tell me something. How does a man stay still when the woman he once swore to protect becomes the one who destroys him in front of a crowd? I walked into that ballroom wearing a simple suit, hoping my wife would at least look at me with a little warmth. But Vanessa stared at me like I was the biggest mistake she ever made. Her family smirked. People whispered. Before I could even breathe, she grabbed the janitor's mop bucket and dumped the entire load of filthy water straight into my face. The whole room erupted in laughter, and she screamed, "You're nothing, Asher! A useless nobody!" As that dirty water slid down my skin, the shame cut deeper than the cold. And while every eye in that ballroom judged me, one brutal thought hit me. They have no idea who they just humiliated. So tell me, if you were standing where I was, what would you have done? Stay with me, and I'll show you exactly who I am. The morning itself was nothing special. No thunder, no drama, just the old fridge humming and the smell of burnt toast in a cramped apartment we rented because it was good enough for now. I poured cheap coffee into a chipped mug and watched the sun crawl through blinds that never opened all the way. For a second, I let myself imagine this was what peace looked like. Then Vanessa walked out, hair on point, blouse pressed, skirt hugging her just right, her Mercer Industries badge resting against her chest like a medal. She didn't look like someone coming from this apartment. She looked like she was just passing through. "Morning," I said. "Yeah, don't forget dinner. I'll be late," she replied, eyes glued to her phone. No kiss, no touch, just logistics. I could have been a roommate, or a chair. At the door, she paused, not to look back, but to slide off her wedding ring, smooth, practiced, like muscle memory. The ring disappeared into that tiny zip pocket in her purse, the one only she ever used. The door clicked shut, and in that quiet, it hit me. My marriage had a public version, and a version she kept hidden. She thought she'd just walked out on a broke, forgettable husband in a small apartment. She had no idea where I was going next. I sat there for a moment, staring at the door she'd just walked through. In her world, I was between jobs, figuring things out, the kind of man you don't bring up at office parties. In mine, that was only half the story. I grabbed my keys, skipped the front entrance, and slipped out through the back. The old sedan waited where it always did, quiet, unremarkable, just like the role I played for everyone in this building. The engine coughed, then settled. I pulled out past the dented mailboxes, the corner store with the faded open sign, the gas station where guys in stained uniforms wiped their hands on old rags. A school bus rumbled by, kids shouting, backpacks swinging. Then the scenery started to change. Houses spread out, lawns got cleaner, cars got newer. The noise of the city thinned into something calmer, more controlled. I turned onto a private road lined with tall trees and stone pillars with one name carved into them: Pike. At the end of that road stood Pike Estate, the house my father built from nothing. The gate swung open the moment it saw my plates. The guard straightened up. "Good morning, Mr. Pike." Out here, I wasn't the man she hid. Out here, I owned the company she proudly wore around her neck. And inside that house, waiting on my desk, was a stack of files with one name that suddenly mattered a lot more to me: Vanessa Cole. From the outside, Pike Estate looks like any rich man's house. Inside, it's a nerve center. I walked past the quiet hallway, past old photos of my father shaking hands with men in suits, and pushed open the heavy door to the room we called the war room. Screens covered the walls, factory feeds, warehouse cameras, live numbers ticking in green and red, Pike Industries breathing in real time. "Morning, Mr. Pike," Meredith said, sliding a stack of folders onto the desk. "Contracts, bonuses, and the promotion list. Marketing's on top." Marketing. Vanessa's world. I sat down and flipped through the pages. Vendors, plant managers, department heads. Every signature I gave meant someone's rent got paid, someone's kid stayed in college. Then I hit the internal promotions. Martin Cole, pay raise, new responsibilities. Tyler Cole, step up in technical grade. Vanessa Cole, proposed promotion and a serious salary bump. I stared at her name for a second. The same woman who hid her ring, the same woman who was ashamed of the man signing this paper. I signed anyway. My ink, my company, their future. To them, I was still just the jobless husband in a cheap apartment. They had no idea the man they looked down on was the one lifting them up, and that by the end of this story, that pen would cut the other way. I didn't see her at the office that morning. I saw the footage later, when I finally wanted answers. Vanessa walked through the revolving doors of Pike Industries like she was walking onto a stage. No ring, no trace of me, just heels, perfume, and that employee badge resting against her chest. "Vanessa, you're killing it today," one coworker joked. Another grinned. "How are you still single? That can't be legal." She laughed, easy and smooth. "You know me. Work is my boyfriend," she said. They laughed with her. None of them knew she'd left a husband eating breakfast alone an hour earlier. She tapped her badge at the elevator, stepped in with a group from marketing, and watched the floors climb. While they talked about deadlines and campaigns, her phone buzzed. Derek. Rooms booked. Same place. After work. She didn't blush, didn't flinch. Just that small, satisfied curve at the corner of her mouth. Upstairs, they saw her as focused, driven, too busy for relationships. Downstairs in my office, I was signing the promotion that would put more money in her account. I thought I was investing in us. She was already scheduling a night with someone who wasn't her husband, and that text was only the beginning of how far she was willing to go. I didn't know it that day. Back then, I just thought she was working late again. When the workday ended, Vanessa didn't walk toward the bus stop or the side lot where the regular staff parked. She headed straight for the front entrance, where Derek's black SUV waited at the curb like it had a reserved spot in her life. She opened the passenger door without knocking, slid in like she'd done it 100 times, and they pulled away from the building I owned. They didn't go home. They went to a hotel the staff knew them by. No questions, no ID, just a nod and a key card, already waiting. Familiar faces, familiar routine. They stepped into the elevator together, his hand on her lower back like he'd earned the right. The doors closed, cutting them off from the rest of the world, sealing in whatever they kept repeating behind those walls. At that exact same time, across town, I was sitting in a boardroom, closing a deal that added hundreds of millions to Pike Industries' value. A room full of suits shook my hand, grateful, excited. Somewhere, a hotel door quietly latched shut. Somewhere else, my pen calmly signed a deal that would make everyone richer. Later, when I finally saw the hotel records and security footage, that timing hit harder than any punch. That night, she came home later than usual. I'd made pasta, nothing special, jar sauce, garlic bread from the discount rack, but it was hot, ready, and waiting at the tiny table by the window. 2 plates, 2 glasses, a habit I kept even when it felt one-sided. The lock turned. She walked in with that strange mix on her face, tired in the eyes, but there was a glow she couldn't quite hide. Not the kind you get from spreadsheets and emails. "Long day?" I asked, setting her plate down. She sighed, dropped her bag onto the couch. "You have no idea. Meetings all day. I'm exhausted." Meetings. That's what she called it. She sat, took a few bites without really tasting anything. Her body was at the table, but her mind was somewhere else. Her gaze kept drifting, not out the window, not at me, just away. "How was your day?" she asked, like she was checking a box. "Pretty normal," I said. "Quiet." She nodded, not really listening. "That's good." We finished most of the meal in small sounds. Forks, glasses, the hum of the fridge. Her phone lit up once on the couch. She didn't look, but I saw the way her shoulders tightened for half a second. Back then, I believed her when she said meetings. Now every time I hear that word, I remember she was never talking about work. And the next time she said it to me was the night she brought up the Gala. The first time she mentioned the Gala, it sounded harmless. We were at the same little table, same cheap plates, same tired food, but her eyes, they were somewhere else. "There's this thing coming up," she said between bites. "The annual company gala. Big night, promotions, recognition, all that." I looked up. "For Pike Industries?" She nodded, and for the first time all day she actually seemed excited. "This could be huge for me, Asher. All the executives will be there, senior managers. It's kind of a milestone." I let her finish, then asked the most normal question a husband can ask. Do spouses get to come too? I'd like to be there with you. She froze for half a second. Not long, just enough for a man who's paying attention to feel it. The fork slowed in her hand. Her eyes dropped to her plate, then bounced away like the question made the room smaller. It's very formal, she said. Mostly higher-ups, important people. I don't even know if +1s are a thing. It's not really that kind of event. She didn't say no, but she didn't say I want you there either. And somehow that silence said more than any answer she could have given me. I wish I could tell you that was the last time she dodged that question. It was just the first. After that dinner, I started paying attention in a way I hadn't before. Every time Vanessa talked about work, the language changed. It wasn't just my job anymore. It was executives, senior leadership, people with real ambition. She said those words like they were a different species, above the rest, above me. When she talked about the gala, her eyes lit up. When she talked about us, her voice dropped, quieter, heavier, like I was a problem she hadn't figured out how to solve yet. One night I asked, "So what's the big deal about this gala anyway?" She shrugged, staring at her phone. "It's just another world, Asher. You wouldn't get it. The conversations, the energy, the expectations. It's different. Another world." The way she said it, I wasn't just outside that world. I didn't qualify to step near it. The more she talked, the clearer it got. At work, she was the sharp, driven woman on the rise. At home, she was the woman who took her ring off before walking into the building. And somewhere between those two versions, I realized something ugly. In her story of success, I wasn't a partner. I was a detail she needed to hide. Once that thought lands, it doesn't leave. It just sits there, waiting for the moment you finally see proof. A few days after that, I sat in the war room at Pike Estate going through the final preparations for the gala. On paper, it was just another corporate event. Numbers, seating charts, speeches. In reality, it was supposed to be a line in my life, a before and after. Meredith slid a folder in front of me. "Here's the recognition list, sir. Final nominees, long service awards, performance honors." I flipped through the pages, scanning names. Then I saw them. Martin Cole, Tyler Cole, Vanessa Cole, all three on the list. Promotions, department recognition, public praise for their loyalty and contribution to Pike Industries. For a second, I couldn't help but smile. In my head, I saw their faces when they realized the quiet guy in the cheap apartment wasn't just trying to find his way. The gala was going to be the night I stepped out from behind my own curtain, not to flex, but to say, "I chose you. I believed in you." "Prepare an additional note," I told Meredith. "I want a special thank you section for the Cole family. Make sure it's in the final speech draft." She nodded, made a note, moved on. I didn't know it then, but that little smile, staring at their names on that list, was the last time I would ever feel proud of them. A couple of nights later, over another simple dinner, I brought it up again. "So," I said lightly, "about the gala. Did they say anything about spouses coming along?" Vanessa didn't even look up right away. She kept cutting her food, buying herself a few seconds. "They're still figuring the guest list out. It's complicated." I let that slide past me once. This time I didn't. "Look," I said, "I'm not asking for much. I just want to be there. Stand in the back, clap when they call your name. That's it." Her shoulders tensed. "Asher, it's not that simple." "Isn't it?" I asked. "You're my wife. You have a big night. Your husband wants to support you. That sounds pretty simple to me." She put her fork down, finally met my eyes, irritation flashing. "You don't understand what this event is. It's not some casual family thing. It's executives, senior leadership, big clients. It's a different level." There it was again. Different world, different level. Not for you. "So I'd be what?" I asked quietly. "Out of place?" She huffed. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." "You don't get it, Asher. You just don't understand." That was the moment it hit me. I hadn't just been left out of her plans. I'd been quietly moved to the wrong side of the line she'd drawn around her real life. And the next conversation we had about that gala, It didn't end with raised voices, it ended with something much worse. The next day, she didn't wait for me to bring it up. She came in already loaded. "Asher, about the gala," she started, tossing her bag on the couch. "I really think it's better if you don't come." No warm-up, no sugarcoating. "Why?" I asked. "Just be honest with me." She exhaled sharply like I was dragging this out on purpose. "Because people talk. They ask questions. What does your husband do? Where does he work? What's his title? And I'm not going to stand there explaining that you're still figuring things out." I just stared at her. She kept going. "I've worked too hard to be taken seriously. I don't want to be judged because I walk in with someone who isn't stable yet." There it was. Not hidden, not implied, said straight to my face. "So I'd make you look bad," I said quietly. She hesitated, then gave me the kind of look a man doesn't forget. "Honestly, it would be embarrassing, Asher." That word hit harder than she knew. Embarrassing. Not struggling. Not in transition. Embarrassing. She walked away to change clothes like she'd just discussed the weather. I stayed at the table, feeling less like a husband and more like a liability she didn't want to be seen standing next to. I don't know how long I sat there before I finally asked it. "Vanessa," I said when she came back out, "just answer me straight. Are you ashamed of me?" She rolled her eyes, grabbed her phone off the counter. "Oh my God, Asher. No. You're twisting my words. You always do this. You make everything so dramatic." "I'm asking you a yes or no question," I replied. My voice wasn't raised. It was worse, flat, controlled. "Are you ashamed of me being there?" She threw her hands up. "It's not about shame. You just don't fit that environment, okay? The people there, they're in a different league. You wouldn't know what to say to them. You'd feel out of place. I'd be worried the whole night. It's just—" She cut herself off, then delivered the sentence that did more damage than she'll ever admit. "You're not a match for that world, Asher. You don't belong there." I didn't answer right away. Couldn't. Because right then, it felt like every quiet thing I'd done for us, every bill paid, every dinner cooked, every second chance I gave her in my own mind, got wiped off the board with one sentence. Every man has his breaking point. It's not always shouting or slamming doors. Sometimes it's just the moment you realize the person you share a bed with would rather stand next to strangers in a ballroom than next to you. And once you see that clearly, there's no unseeing it. The fight didn't end with some big dramatic moment. It ended with a door. She grabbed her phone, muttered, "I'm done talking about this," and walked to the bedroom. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the cheap frame, then nothing. No footsteps, no apology, just silence. I stayed at the table. The food was cold by then. I pushed the plate away, no appetite left, just a heaviness sitting right under my ribs. I looked down at my hand, at the ring I still wore. The same ring she slipped off every morning like it was just part of her routine. Keys, phone, wallet, hide the husband. I turned it slowly on my finger and asked myself a question I never thought I'd have to ask. Does this still mean anything to her? Or is it just me holding on to it? After a while, I took a breath and made a decision. "Fine," I said quietly into the empty kitchen. "You can have your gala, Vanessa. Exactly the way you want it. No arguments. No more begging for a seat next to her." On the outside, I chose silence. On the inside, something cracked. And once a crack shows up in a man's chest like that, it doesn't disappear. It spreads. And as the gala got closer, she wasn't the only one getting ready for it. The days leading up to the gala felt like two separate movies playing at the same time. In our apartment, Vanessa stood in front of the mirror trying on dresses she'd ordered just to see. Sequins, satin, deep navy, then silver. She'd step back, angle her body, snap a picture, then send it off. I heard her on the phone with her mother. "Mom, this is the one, right?" Her mother laughed through the speaker. "You look like a star, honey. This is your night." Tyler chimed in from the background, loud as ever. "It's the Cole family gala. Don't forget us when you're promoted." They laughed like it was already guaranteed. Across town at Pike Estate, I stood in front of a different kind of mirror, my reflection in the black glass of the war room screens. Meredith handed me a draft. "Here's your speech, sir. Standard CEO stuff. Do you want to keep your identity Low-key, like usual. I scanned the lines. At the bottom was the section I'd asked for. A special thank you to the Cole family. I closed the folder. No, I said. Not this time. Tomorrow night, they'll know exactly who I am. She nodded, made a quick note. In my mind, the gala was still a gift. A night to step into the light with them beside me. I had no idea they were about to use that same night to push me as far into the shadows as they possibly could. A couple of nights before the gala, we had dinner at her parents' place. I already knew how it would go. I went anyway. Martin opened the door, gave me that polite but not really smile. Asher, still, taking some time to figure things out, huh? We sat at the table, Linda piling food onto plates like that could hide the way she watched me. So, Martin said, cutting into his steak, any updates on the job front? You know how it is, man without a career, life gets pretty tough. Tyler snorted. It's fine, Dad. The gala world is for people like us, right? Executives, rising stars. He doesn't have to worry about all that. Linda jumped in. Vanessa told me her friend's husband just got promoted at the bank. Solid income, good benefits. She's lucky. The message was clear. Their daughter could have done better. I looked at Vanessa. She didn't say a word. No, that's enough. No, Asher's doing fine. Just silence, staring at her plate. In that moment, it clicked. To them, I wasn't just going through a phase. I wasn't a man rebuilding. I was the cautionary tale sitting at their table. The kind of man you tolerate in private and keep far away from the rooms you brag about. And the most brutal part? Their opinion only mattered because my own wife was letting it stand. The night before the gala felt like we were living in two different timelines under the same roof. Vanessa laid everything out on the bed. Dress, heels, clutch, jewelry, printed invite. She moved around the room with this quiet excitement, like a kid before Christmas, except this time the gift was her own reflection. How do I look? She asked, doing a slow turn in front of the mirror. Beautiful, I said. It was still true, even if it hurt. I watched her tuck the invitation carefully into her bag, check the time again, smile at messages popping up on her screen. I already knew none of those messages were from me. Tomorrow, I tried, keeping my voice light. Can I at least drive you to the hotel? Drop you off at the entrance? She didn't think long. Didn't need to. No need, she said. I'm going with my family and some coworkers. It's easier that way. No need. 2 small words, big enough to cut a man out of his own marriage. She went to bed early, screen glowing in her hands until she finally turned away from me and fell asleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathing, feeling like I was sharing a bed with a stranger who'd already decided which world she wanted to live in, and it wasn't mine. What she didn't know was that I wasn't planning to stay in the dark much longer. The next night, we were both going to the same gala. She just had no idea under which name I'd be walking through those doors. The morning of the gala, she woke up before her alarm. Vanessa moved around the bedroom quietly, but not carefully. She wasn't worried about waking me, just about being late. Makeup bag open, curling iron on, dress covered in a plastic sleeve near the closet. She checked the time more than she checked on me. No mention of the evening. No, are you coming? No, we'll talk about it. Just, don't wait up, it might run late, as she slipped on her heels and headed for the door. The ring went into the purse. The wife went to work. At Pike Estate, a different kind of preparation was happening. Security confirmed the convoy route. Black SUVs were checked, drivers briefed. The hotel had the CEO's entrance time. The staff had the talking points. The program had my name at the top, even if most people still didn't know what I looked like. I stood in the war room in a simple suit, not the one I'd wear that night. Update the schedule, I told Meredith. Tonight, my appearance will be delayed. She frowned slightly. You don't want the usual grand entrance? Not at first, I said. Before anyone hears from the CEO, I want to see the room as just another man. She nodded, understood more than I said out loud. Same gala, same night. But it was no longer our big moment. She was going there to shine. I was going there to watch exactly how far she'd go, when she still thought I was nobody. That evening, while I was still at home buttoning the same ordinary suit she hated, Vanessa was already living her big night. She arrived at the Westbrook Grand Hotel in a navy gown that hugged every line she knew people admired. The kind of dress that doesn't just say, "I belong here," it says, "Look at me while I rise." The Cole family was waiting at the entrance like they owned the place. Martin straightened his tie as she stepped out of the car. "There she is, our star," he said proudly. Linda fussed with an imaginary wrinkle on the dress. "Everyone's going to be talking about you tonight," Tyler smirked. "Don't forget the little people when you're management, sis." Coworkers walked by, tossing compliments, dropping hints about promotions and big announcements. She soaked it in. Inside the lobby, under crystal chandeliers and soft music, she was in her element. No ring, no husband in sight, just Vanessa Cole, the woman on the rise. Across the room, Derek spotted her. He lifted his glass slightly. That private little toast meant only for her. She held his gaze for a second too long, her lips curving in a way I knew wasn't for me. In her head, this was her night, her stage, her world, her people. She had no idea I was on my way to the same ballroom, not as the man she was embarrassed by, but as the man whose name was printed on every paycheck in that room. I didn't take the convoy that night. I drove myself, in the same old sedan everybody loved to judge, parked a block away from the Westbrook Grand, and walked the rest of the distance like any other forgettable guest. Inside the lobby, people in tuxes and evening gowns floated past me, laughing, adjusting cufflinks, checking lipstick. No one gave me a second look. That was the point. No security detail, no announcement, no, "Mr. Pike, this way, sir." Just a nod from the front desk and a generic, "Good evening," from a staff member who had no idea his paycheck had my name behind it. I followed the music to the ballroom doors, soft jazz, clinking glasses, the low hum of people who think they're important. I stopped right there, hand on the handle, and took a slow breath. A part of me still hoped for something stupid, that she'd see me, be surprised, maybe even a little guilty, that she'd walk over, say, "I was wrong. I want you here." I knew better, but hope is stubborn, especially in a man who's loved too long. I pushed the door open and stepped into her world, not as the CEO, not yet, just as the man she was so sure didn't belong there. The ballroom was everything she'd described: high ceilings, chandeliers, waiters weaving through the crowd with trays of champagne, laughter bouncing off polished floors. I stood near the entrance for a moment, letting my eyes adjust and my heart steady. Then I saw her. Vanessa was near the center of the room with her parents and Tyler, surrounded by coworkers. She was laughing at something, head tilted back slightly, one hand resting on her father's arm. She fit there, effortlessly. It took a few seconds for her gaze to drift toward the door. When her eyes landed on me, the world didn't stop, but something in her face did. First, there was pure shock. Her smile died. Her body stiffened just a little. Half a heartbeat later, the shock turned into something colder, confusion, then anger, then something that looked a lot like panic. Her family followed her stare. Martin's jaw tightened. Linda's mouth pinched like she'd just tasted something sour. Tyler actually scoffed, shook his head, muttering something to himself. No one waved. No one smiled. They looked at me like I'd just tracked mud across their perfect white carpet. In that moment, I understood exactly where I stood in their story, not as a guest, not as family, but as a problem. And the way Vanessa started moving toward me told me she wasn't coming over to say hello. Vanessa reached me fast, heels sharp against the floor, that polite little party smile still glued to her face for anyone watching. Up close, it dropped. "What the hell are you doing here?" she hissed, her teeth barely moving. Her eyes were pure anger, not shock anymore, like I was the one crossing a line. "I just wanted to," I started. She didn't let me finish. She spun halfway toward the nearest table, raised her voice just enough to carry. "We are here to celebrate success," she announced, that fake smile snapping back on. "Not to run a charity event for unemployed guests who don't belong." A few people chuckled, unsure if she was joking. She kept going. "Some of us worked hard to be in this room. This isn't a shelter for men who can't hold down a job." Now they knew she wasn't joking. The words hung there, heavy, ugly. A couple nearby tried to look away. Others stared right at me, the way people look at a car wreck they didn't cause. I didn't say a thing, didn't defend myself, didn't correct her. In that moment, she wasn't just distancing herself from me. She was making sure everyone in that room understood she was above me. And then she decided words weren't enough. If it had stayed at words, maybe I could have swallowed it. Words fade, people forget. But she didn't stop there. A cleaning cart stood a few feet away, parked against a column. Spray bottles, rags, a mop, and a half-full bucket of dirty water the staff hadn't dumped yet. Vanessa's eyes flicked toward it, and in that split second, I knew. She walked over, still in that glittering gown, and wrapped her fingers around the handle. Someone laughed nervously. "Vanessa, what are you doing?" She didn't answer. She turned back to me, lifting the bucket with both hands. For a heartbeat, everything in me wanted to believe she wouldn't go through with it, that there was still a line she wouldn't cross. There wasn't. She swung. Cold, filthy water exploded across my chest, my face, my hair. The sound of it hitting me was louder than the music for a second. Then came the reactions. Gasps. A couple of shocked laughs. One loud, "Oh my God, did she really just do that?" I felt water dripping from my jaw onto the polished floor, soaking into a suit I'd worn to boardrooms most of these people would never even see. Phones came up, screens lit my face. To them, it was a moment, a story to tell later. To me, it was the exact second something inside finally stopped breaking and started hardening. The water was still dripping off my face when Vanessa stepped closer, chest heaving, eyes bright with anger and adrenaline. "You don't belong here, Asher," she shouted. "You never did." The whole room heard it. Martin actually clapped. "Finally," he said, loud enough for nearby tables. "You finally cut that dead weight loose." Dead weight. That's what I was to the man whose salary I'd personally approved. Tyler looked me up and down, smirking. "Yeah, this is not exactly real man energy," he snorted. "Imagine showing up here like that." He had no idea he was saying that to the man who owned the building. Derek stood farther back, frozen. He didn't join in, didn't step up either. For the first time, he saw what she was capable of when someone became inconvenient. I didn't yell, didn't argue, didn't throw my title in their faces. I just looked at each of them, slowly. My wife, her proud father, her smug brother, her secret lover. With one sentence, "You never belonged here." They didn't just push me out of a gala. They tried to erase my place in their world completely. And that was the last line they got to draw. There was nothing left to say after that. I turned and walked toward the doors. No one called my name. No one said, "That's enough, Vanessa." The same people who'd shaken my hand in meetings had no idea they were watching their CEO drip dirty water onto the floor. Each step left a small trail behind me, drops sliding off my sleeves onto that perfect polished surface. I knew someone would mop it up in 10 minutes and pretend it never happened. That's how they planned to handle me too. The music was still off. The room was full of low whispers and stolen glances. A few people looked away, suddenly fascinated with their drinks. Others kept their phones ready, hungry for humiliation that wasn't theirs. I pushed through the ballroom doors and stepped into the cooler hallway. Out there, the air didn't smell like perfume and fake compliments. It smelled like cleaning chemicals and something close to clarity. Outside, the cold hit my wet clothes hard. I walked to my car, opened the door, and sat down. In the rearview mirror, a soaked man stared back at me. Not a loser, not a victim. A man who'd just been reminded how dangerous it is to humiliate someone who actually holds your future in his hands. I don't know how long I sat there in the car, hands on the wheel, clothes stiff with dried filth. Long enough for the anger to cool into something sharper. I picked up my phone and scrolled to a number I rarely used outside business. Meredith. When she answered, her voice was calm, professional. "Yes, sir?" I looked at myself in the mirror one more time. The loser, the dead weight, the man who didn't belong. "It's time," I said. "Activate Plan B, tonight." There was half a second of silence on the line. She understood more than I said. "Yes, Mr. Pike. I'll have the convoy redirected to the hotel. Internal security will be briefed. Program adjusted. Good, I replied. No announcements until I walk in. Not a word. Understood. I ended the call and started the engine. On the drive back to the apartment, the humiliation stopped being the main thing playing in my head. Not Vanessa's scream, not the laughter, not even the bucket. What stayed was a simple thought. I had allowed them to define who I was in that room. That ended tonight. I wasn't going back to the gala as the man they'd soaked in dirty water. I was going back as the man who decided whether they kept the lives they were so proud of. Back at the apartment, everything looked exactly the same. The cheap table, the worn-out couch, the photo of us from a time when I still believed we were on the same team. I peeled the stiff, cold shirt off my skin, tossed it straight into the trash, and went to the bathroom. The mirror showed streaks of dried water on my face, traces of someone else's disrespect. I turned the shower on hot and stepped in. For a few minutes, I just stood there, letting the water pound against me, washing away the stink of that ballroom. The sound of the bucket. The word embarrassing. The cheers from her own father when she humiliated me. When I stepped out, I didn't reach for the usual clothes. I went to the back of the closet and pulled out the garment bag I hadn't touched in months. The zipper slid down slow. The CEO's suit waited inside, dark, clean, precise. The version of me I'd been keeping out of her sight. I put it on piece by piece. Shirt, tie, jacket. Then I opened the small box on the shelf and took out my father's watch, the one he gave me when he handed me Pike Industries. The moment I fastened it around my wrist and buttoned that jacket, it clicked. I wasn't the man Vanessa talked down to anymore. I was the man she'd just declared war on. Without knowing, I owned the battlefield. When I stepped out of the apartment building this time, the street didn't look the same. A line of black SUVs waited at the curb, engines running low, headlights cutting through the dark. The same city that watched me walk home soaked in dirty water was now staring at something else entirely. The first security man reached the sidewalk before I did. He opened the rear door and dipped his head. "We're very sorry for what happened tonight, sir," he said quietly. I just nodded. "Let's go. No hiding now, no slipping out the back, no old sedan blending into traffic." The convoy pulled away from the curb, one car after another, moving with the kind of confidence Vanessa worshipped in other men. Streetlights slid over the tinted glass. In the reflection, I saw two versions of myself overlapping: the humiliated husband in a cheap suit, and the CEO who'd built every paycheck in that ballroom. One of them had been laughed at. The other was on his way to adjust the balance. The closer we got to the Westbrook Grand, the calmer I felt. They thought my exit was the end of the show. They hadn't realized the main character hadn't even taken the stage yet. Back inside the ballroom, the party had recovered. The music was back. Glasses were refilled. Someone had mopped the floor where I'd stood, like nothing ugly had ever happened there. People were laughing again, avoiding the subject the way people do when they know a line was crossed but don't want to touch it. Then the MC got a signal from the event staff. The music cut off mid-note. Lights shifted. The room settled. "Ladies and gentlemen," the MC said, voice carrying across the hall, "may I have your attention, please? The CEO of Pike Industries has arrived." The words landed like a stone dropped in still water. The main doors opened. This time, I didn't walk in as the man in the cheap, wet suit. I walked in wearing the title they'd been chasing their whole careers. I moved toward the stage, and heads turned in a wave. Some people frowned, recognizing my face but not understanding yet. Others straightened automatically at the word CEO. Then it hit them. You could see it. Vanessa's eyes went wide, color draining from her face. Martin's mouth fell open. Linda's hand flew to her chest. Tyler looked like someone had pulled the floor out from under him. Even Derek went pale. They didn't need anyone to spell it out. The unemployed loser they'd just soaked and laughed at was the man whose name sat on every contract, every badge, every wall in that building. And for the first time that night, the silence belonged to me. I took the mic and let the room settle. "Good evening," I started. "Most of you know Pike Industries by its numbers, our growth, our contracts, our market share." I paused, scanning faces, people who'd passed me in hallways without a second glance. But that's not what keeps this place alive. This company runs on the backs of people who show up every day, do their jobs, and treat others with basic respect. From the plant floor to this ballroom, you are the reason Pike stands. A small wave of pride moved through the crowd. Then I let my voice drop. But tonight, we also saw something else. You could feel the shift. Tonight, we saw what happens when success gets twisted into arrogance. When people forget that titles and paychecks don't make them better than anyone, especially the ones they think are unimportant. My eyes found the coals. I didn't rush past them. I let the moment sit. A person's true character is not revealed by how they look up, I said slowly, but by how they look down, on the people they think can do nothing for them. The room went quiet. No music, no side chatter, just that line hanging in the air. I built this company with one non-negotiable rule. We don't humiliate people here. Not for status, not for ego, not for fun. Then I nodded toward HR. Unfortunately, not everyone in this room still qualifies to work under that rule. I gave a small signal, and Daniel, our HR director, walked up to the stage with a sealed envelope in his hand. He looked more tense than I did. I took it, broke the seal, unfolded the papers slowly. No rush. Every second tightened the air. These decisions, I said, are not made lightly, but they are final. I read the first name, clear and steady. Vanessa Cole, the second. Martin Cole, the third. Tyler Cole. You could almost hear the blood drain from their faces. The whole ballroom went dead silent. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. All three, I continued, are hereby terminated from their positions at Pike Industries, effective immediately. No one moved. And due to conduct that violates not only company policy but basic human decency, I let that sink in. They are permanently blacklisted from any current or future entity under the Pike name. A few people actually gasped. This company does not reward cruelty, I said. We don't tolerate public humiliation of any employee, and we sure as hell won't allow anyone to spit on the name that signs their checks. I folded the papers, handed them back to Daniel, and stepped away from the mic. In one night, the people who thought they ruled the room found out they'd been standing on ground I could pull out from under them any time I chose. When I stepped back from the mic, I didn't need to say anything else. The silence did the work for me. Vanessa swayed where she stood, one hand gripping the back of a chair like it was the only solid thing in the room. "Asher," she whispered first, then louder, voice cracking. "Asher, I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know." For the first time that night, she wasn't performing. There was no stage voice left, just panic. Martin tried to laugh it off, his face stretched too tight. This has to be some kind of misunderstanding, right? A joke? He wouldn't actually... No one joined in. Tyler looked around desperately for someone in upper management, someone to pull a string, overturn the decision. But every leader in that room had just heard how public this was, and none of them were going to stand between me and a line I'd already drawn. No one spoke up for them, not one person. The same crowd that had laughed when the bucket hit me now watched them in cold, heavy silence. I set the microphone back on the stand. No dramatic drop, no last jab. Then I walked off the stage. And that quiet, suffocating stillness that followed, it cut sharper than any insult they'd ever thrown at me. I stepped down from the stage and walked straight through the crowd. People moved out of my way without a word. Some lowered their eyes. Some held them up, almost in respect. It was a very different walk than the one I'd taken out of that room soaked in dirty water. As I passed, I came within arm's reach of Vanessa. She lunged forward, reaching for my hand. Her fingers brushed my sleeve and slipped. "Asher, please wait," she begged, voice shaking. "Just let me explain. I didn't know. I was stupid. I kept walking. She called my name again. And again. Louder each time. The arrogance was gone. The confidence. The cold disgust. All that was left was fear. I didn't slow down. Didn't look back. I pushed through the same doors I'd walked out of earlier that night, but this time the music didn't start up behind me. Nobody rushed to clean up what had just happened. The ballroom doors closed with a solid final sound. Outside, the convoy was lined up right at the entrance. Valet, staff, guests lingering for air, all of them saw exactly who those cars were waiting for. I got into the SUV, the door closed, and as we pulled away, I knew one thing for sure. That door behind me wasn't just the exit to a gala. It was the last door Vanessa would ever find me standing on the other side of. I didn't see them the next morning. I didn't have to. I knew exactly how their day would start. At 8 a.m., like always, Martin and Tyler drove to the Pike Industries gate. They tapped their badges at the turnstile. Nothing. Red light. Denied. Try again. Same result. Security stepped over. Calm. Professional. Your access has been revoked. You'll need to contact HR for further information. They both knew what that meant. Across town, Vanessa walked up to the glass doors like she always did, heels sharp, head high. She tapped her badge on the scanner. It beeped twice, then flashed red. System must be down, she tried to joke. The guard checked his screen, then straightened. I'm afraid your profile's been deactivated, Ms. Cole. Her work email? Locked. Internal accounts? Gone. Logins? Dead. They started calling people inside. Voicemail. Short texts back. I'm not supposed to get involved, I'm sorry. The only person who answered Vanessa directly was Derek. She wrote, We need to talk. I'm freaking out. His reply was one line. Don't contact me again. I can't afford to be tied to this. The same man who was happy to share a secret hotel room didn't want his name anywhere near hers once the lights came on. That was their first real lesson in you reap what you sow. Losing their jobs was just the beginning. Martin did what any man his age would do. He put on a decent shirt, printed his resume, and started knocking on old contacts. Another warehouse, another logistics firm, another mid-size operation in the same industry. At first, the conversations went well. Then the companies checked his background. Calls stopped being returned. Emails got lost. Positions he was perfect for suddenly vanished. Tyler tried his luck too. Fresh CV, solid technical skills, interviews that seemed to go great. Then came the reference checks. Once Pike Industries' name showed up on his work history, the tone changed. We've decided to move in a different direction. Not the right fit at this time. No one said it to their faces, but the pattern was loud. Vanessa went to agencies and marketing firms, portfolio in hand. They liked her work, on paper. Then they asked, So, you worked at Pike Industries? She'd nod. Their eyes would flicker for just a second. By the time she got home, word was already drifting through the local market. That's the family the CEO fired in front of everyone at the gala. Attitude problem, messy situation. Blacklisted doesn't just mean you lose one job. It means every other door quietly locks, and no one bothers to tell you where the key went. I didn't send a text. I didn't ask to talk first. I sent a courier. One quiet morning, while the Cole family was still trying to figure out how to fix their careers, the doorbell rang at their house. Vanessa answered, expecting a package or a bill. Instead, she found a man in a uniform holding an envelope and a clipboard. Signature, please, he said. She signed, shut the door, and opened it right there in the hallway. The first line stopped her breath. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Her hands started shaking. The words blurred for a second, but not enough to hide my name at the bottom. My signature. Clean. Decisive. Asher wouldn't, she whispered, almost to herself. Martin read over her shoulder, jaw tight. Linda stayed silent. For once, she had nothing to say. Tyler looked away. They all knew this wasn't a threat. It was a conclusion. She called my phone. Once. Twice. 10 times. The calls came through. I watched the name light up on my screen more than once. I didn't answer a single one. There's a moment when a man stops arguing with what's already broken, and just signs where he has to sign. For me, that envelope was that moment. The day of the hearing was gray and cold. Fitting. I arrived at the courthouse on time with my lawyer, the same way I'd arrive at any important meeting, documents ready, expression steady. To me, this wasn't a performance. It was a formality. When Vanessa walked in, I almost didn't recognize her at first. No gown, no heels, just a plain black dress, hair pulled back, face thinner than I remembered. She looked smaller, not physically, spiritually, like the weight of everything had finally caught up. She sat across the aisle with her parents. Nobody spoke loud. The The room smelled like paper and old wood and endings. The judge reviewed the file, flipping through pages of what used to be a life. Mr. Pike's personal assets, he read, are held in a trust established prior to this marriage. Under state law, those assets are not marital property. In plain English, there was nothing for her to claim. Vanessa finally spoke, voice cracking. I didn't know. I was wrong. I just want another chance. I still love him. The judge didn't argue. That wasn't his job. He stamped the document, picked up the gavel, and said 2 words that closed the door tighter than any I'd walked through that night at the Gala. Divorce granted. The sound of that gavel was short, clean, and final. No shouting, no fight. Just the legal echo of a decision I'd made the night she chose an audience over her own husband. Court was over. Paper signed. Gavel dropped. On paper, we were done. I walked out into the hallway with my lawyer, talking dates and final steps like it was any other closing. Behind me, I heard footsteps speeding up. Then my name. Asher, wait, please. I didn't stop at first. I'd heard that voice beg once already at the Gala, and it hadn't been for me. It had been for her job, her image, her place in that room. This time was different. She grabbed my sleeve. Not hard, just enough to make me pause. Her eyes were red, makeup smudged, breath uneven. There was no pride left, no sharp tongue, no audience to play to. Asher, please, I'm begging you, she said, words tumbling out. I was wrong. I was stupid. I'll change. I don't want to lose you. I don't want this to be the end. For a second, I just looked at her. And what surprised me most wasn't the hurt. It was the absence of it. I wasn't angry anymore. I just felt done. There is nothing left, I said quietly. And there never will be. Her hand slipped from my sleeve like it had nothing to hold on to anymore. I turned and walked away. She stayed in that hallway crying over a man she'd already thrown away once in front of a crowd. This time, there was no crowd, just the echo of a choice she couldn't take back. Life didn't stop after all that. It never does. I went back to running Pike Industries. Meetings, strategies, numbers. The world moved on, even if a part of my past stayed stuck in a ballroom with a bucket of dirty water. I left the small apartment behind and moved fully into Pike Estate. No more splitting lives. No more pretending to be less than who I was to make someone else feel bigger. Sometimes, late at night, I'd find myself in the kitchen at the estate, cooking something simple out of habit, pasta, eggs, cheap recipes from a different chapter of my life. For a second, I'd see her at that small table, kicking off her heels and complaining about long days. Then I'd remember the look on her face while she reached for that bucket, and the way her family clapped. Every time my mind tried to romanticize the good moments, that scene came back like a cold slap. Water, laughter, her voice yelling, "You don't belong here!" That's when the doubt shut up. I started spending more time on the floor of my company, talking to the people nobody usually sees. The forklift drivers, the receptionists, the night shift. Turns out the ones with the least status understand respect better than anyone at that gala ever did. And that's the part of the story I chose to keep. If there's one thing I took from all of this, it's this. Respect isn't tested on the easy days. It's tested the moment someone thinks they're above you. The bucket of dirty water? That wasn't just humiliation. That was God's way, or life's way, of rinsing the illusion off some people I should have seen clearly a long time ago. My biggest mistake wasn't hiding who I was. It was giving my loyalty to someone who only valued me when no one else was looking. You can lose money, jobs, houses. You can rebuild all of that. But once respect is gone, once you see what someone is capable of when they think you're beneath them, there's no going back to how it was. So I'll ask you straight. If you were in my shoes, would you forgive Vanessa? Do you think she deserves another chance? Or was that bucket the line you can't cross with a man and expect to keep him? Tell me in the comments. Share your own story, times you stayed too long, or times you finally walked away. Because at the end of the day, a man can lose a lot and still be a man. But once he loses his respect for someone, it's over.